Hey, it's Geoff Mosher with another Inside the Birds Minute here. I want to talk about Sunday's game, Eagles Giants. Everybody knows what's on the line, but one of the biggest concerns I have for the Eagles has to do with Zach Ertz not playing. That's fairly obvious. I think anybody who follows the Eagles or just knows what the Eagles do, you say you don't have Zach Ertz and he's your best playmaker and you're already down a lot of playmakers from the start of the year. That's a bad thing. So that's not the part I want to talk about. That much is kind of obvious. What I want to talk about is identity and why I think this game could be a real struggle for the Eagles offense going in. It's not just the fact that they don't have Zach Ertz, because to be honest with you, Dallas Goedert is a very talented tight end. He can move into the role that Zach Ertz plays as the number one tight end and catch a lot of balls. The difference I see that gives me concern is the identity of the Eagles offense all year long and ever since Deshaun Jackson was lost in the season opener, basically, with an ab injury. The Eagles have been a predominantly 12 personnel team. And to be honest, going into the year, that's where we thought that they would function the best anyway. You have Goddard, you have Ertz, you want to get them on the field as much as possible because they're two very good weapons. Now, I think they went into the year thinking they could have an effective 12 personnel team and an effective 11 personnel offense when you have Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and Deshaun Jackson on the field. But 11 personnel went out the door pretty quickly at the start of the year, and it just hasn't been their most effective form of attack because of injuries to Deshaun, injuries to Alshon, ineffective play, and injuries by Nelson. So you go into this Giants game, and the Giants are a bad defense, and they're not, they can stop the run a little bit better now. They get lost in the defensive backfield a lot. But the Eagles are not who they want to be. Without Zach Ertz, and even though they do have Joshua Perkins, and even though they did sign Richard Rodgers, I don't know how much Richard Rodgers can come in and contribute. I'm not sure that they want to be 65 to 70% in 12 personnel with Dallas Goedert and Joshua Perkins. Perkins isn't nearly the blocker that Goddard was, playing as that number two tight end or that inline tight end, and he's certainly not nearly the pass catcher that Zach Ertz is. So 12 personnel is no longer your strength. The problem is 11 personnel is not your strength either. You have Greg Ward, you have Robert Davis, and you've got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who are probably going to see the most amount of snaps at wide receiver. So if you're Doug Peterson going into this game, your biggest concern is not only the absence of a guy like Ertz, but who are you? Are you a 12 personnel team like you've been all year? Or are you an 11 personnel team like you would like to be if you have really good wide receivers? If you're a 12 personnel team, you only really have one good tight end. It's not going to be a strength for you. If you're an 11 personnel team, well, you've got three wide receivers, and right now Greg Ward is the only guy who's actually catching the ball. And as good of a story as Greg Ward has been, when you start to look at the wide receiver talent on the field for both teams, I mean, you have guys like Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, who has a lot of speed out there. Ward's been a great story, but he'd probably be the fourth best wide receiver on the Giants. And I'm not trying to knock Greg Ward. What I'm simply saying is all year long, you have an identity. Look at the Baltimore Ravens. They built their offense around Lamar Jackson. Everything they do is about that offensive line, that running game, the ability to bring defenders in the box to stop the run, and then get Lamar Jackson outside of the box with his lethal runs and his ability to throw the ball, which is probably underrated. And it's been really difficult to stop. And if you look, if Lamar Jackson doesn't play or gets hurt, they have a mobile guy like RG3 who can do the same as a backup. And they even brought in Trace McSorley from Penn State, who's another mobile type of quarterback. So they don't have to change around their entire offense if Lamar Jackson is going to get hurt. With Zach Ertz being hurt here, I really don't know where Doug thinks his strongest formation is, whether it's still 12 personnel and then just getting some kind of combination of Goddard on the field with either Perkins or Rodgers or whatever, or if he feels like he has to play more 11 personnel, and then you've got Ward, Arcega-Whiteside, Robert Davis. It's just really not a good situation. I mean, it's easy to say, well, yeah, it's not a good situation anyway because you don't have Zach Ertz. But again, now you have Doug not only without one of maybe his best pass catcher and playmaker on offense, but kind of unsure, uncertain of the best way to go about being an offense and moving the ball. And he's probably going to have to run around different groups of personnel out there. You might see some false starts. You might see some formation penalties. You might see some 12-man men on the field. I mean, you're on the road to begin with. This is a pressure situation, sort of a must-win game, depending on what happens with Dallas, Washington. And I just don't think that that's a small issue, not knowing what your best personnel formation is going to be against the Giants. It's easy to say the Giants stink, they're lousy, they can score a lot of points. As you saw last week with Daniel Jones having one of his best games, having 5 touchdowns. And if it comes down to a shootout, because the Eagles defense does not travel very well, you just wonder, will the Eagles have, for a 4th straight week, enough ammunition to be able to survive a shootout? I mean, the Washington game and the New York game 2 and 3 weeks ago were both fourth quarter type games where they had to pull it out in the end. And now you've taken away another weapon, and now you've taken away the identity of what the Eagles do. So it'll be very interesting to see what Doug Peterson decides to do on Sunday at MetLife Stadium against the Giants from a formation and a personnel standpoint, because I think he's really in a bind. All right, that's it for this Inside the Birds Minute. I'm Geoff Mosher. Please make sure you're not only watching these videos, but subscribing to our YouTube page, and make sure you're listening to the Inside the Birds podcast with me and Adam Kaplan. All right, available on almost every single podcast platform. We will catch you guys very soon. Enjoy the game on Sunday.